And I'm kind of glad you wanted to do a little story about this because this is kind of interesting. It's an opportunity to talk about well trout raising and uh, the history really of trout too. So it's a good thing to ask me about. So yeah, so
Well, good. I believe I understand, but I'm going to ask you the questions to make sure I
sure
understand.
we'll make it work. So
Sounds good. Sounds good. So basically, the viewer here wants to know: is there a break like you find at theaters and with fishing permits and a lot of other places for senior citizens when it comes
no,
to trout fishing?
with trout permits in Missouri, the permit is $12 for age 16 and older, and it's $6 for age 15 and younger. And yes, with your regular fishing permit, when you're under 15, or when you're 15 and under, or 65 and older, it's for free. It's just for 16 through 64 is when you have to pay the fishing permit price. The reason price trout permit pricing is different is because trout are a non-native species, and this covers the cost of raising them. This covers the cost of raising them in a hatchery, of stocking them, covers all the cost of having trout in Missouri. Uh, Trout has an interesting history in Missouri. As I said, they're not native. They were first brought here probably in the late 1800s. Our hatchery system, what we have, our state managed hatchery system, actually predates the Missouri Department of Conservation, started in the 1920s. But in when the Conservation Department came into existence in 1937, one of the first things we did, one of the early, let me put it this way, when the Conservation Department came into existence in 1937, one of the early things we did was at the three trout parks that were in existence at that time, which was at Montauk, Bennett Spring, and Roaring River, we did have a daily trout tag. We did charge a daily trout tag, and again, that price covered the cost of raising them, stocking them, all because with trout, with our other fish that reproduce naturally in our lakes, obviously there's not a cost with them. But when you have to raise a trout from the egg all up to catching size, well, there's a cost with that. And trout were popular with Missourians then, and they still are popular. So anyway, we in like I say, in 1938, we started a trout permit tag at the trout parks. Now, in the early 1960s, and when 1959, when Table Rock Dam was built, that created a trout fishery at Lake Taneycomo because of the cold water discharge from the lake. So it created an opportunity for trout fishing at Lake Taneycomo, but we didn't have the same opportunity to pay for this. So in 1962, a trout permit was started to cover the costs of raising trout. And it's interesting that the person who called it a trout stamp because yes, that's a little bit of our history. It was initially it looked like a stamp, and Paul, I'm not sure if it had an adhesive back, but I think it did.
Mm.
I think that the general you could stick it to. Remember, everything was paper back then. We didn't have apps and all this computer stuff back then. Everything, and I think that the reason being, you could stick the stamp to your fishing permit, and that way, if you were asked to show your fishing permit, you could show your fishing permit, and your trout stamp was attached to it, and it did look like a stamp. Now you just have it's on your I mean, of course, it's on your app, or you can get the paper, but even on your paper, it just shows you have trout fishing permits. But so anyway, I know that's a long, wordy question, but the basic reason that we have this pricing system for the trout permit that's different from our regular fishing permit is that this helps cover the cost of trout fishing in Missouri. About 1.7 million trout are raised in Missouri each year, and trout fishing generates around $187 million for Missouri. Now that's not the permit. That's all that I guess the best way to say it, trout fishing has an economic impact on Missouri that equals about $187 million. That is the lodging spent for trout, the gas that's spent to get to trout fishing places, the meals that trout anglers buy when they're not fishing for trout, all this exponential economic impact. So trout fishing is a big deal in Missouri. It's popular with the Missourians. And so that this fee that you pay for the trout permit helps to cover the fun of fishing for trout in Missouri.
Bottom line, if
Yes.
you're catching trout in Missouri, whether
Yes.
it's in the parks or Lake Taneycomo, you should have the permit.
Yes. Yes. And I realize I talked way beyond your
No, no, no.
question.
I just want to make
So,
sure I have it right. Yeah.
yes, yes, the bottom. Okay, if you're fishing for trout, and I think this was asking. Let me get this off the screen here. Uh, and I just got an email from it. I said 1.7 million trout are raised each year. 1.5 million trout are raised each year in Missouri. But yes, if you're fishing for trout at Lake Taneycomo or some of our trout fishing streams like Crane Creek, places like that, the trout permit is $12 for age 16 and older and $6 for age 15 and younger. But you do have to purchase that trout permit. Now at the trout parks, which is Roaring River, Bennett Spring, Montauk, and Merrimack Spring Park, you have to buy a daily trout tag. That's $5 for age 16 and up, $3 for age 15 and younger. So these are different trout permits, but the purpose of them is the same. They cover the cost that it takes to raise trout in Missouri. Because as I said, with trout, we raise them in a hatchery from eggs up to stocking size, and then we stock them at Lake Taneycomo or at the trout parks or at these specially managed sections of stream that can support trout populations of streams. And that, like I say, the trout fishing is very popular with Missourians, and this cost of the trout permit helps cover the cost of raising trout in Missouri.
Has the department ever considered a discount for seniors? I'm sure that's what's on the mind of this viewer.
Right. Yeah. I don't know, Paul. I truly don't know. I don't know. So,
Okay.
but I will say that, like I say, trout fishing is popular with Missourians, and this trout permit that was started in 1962, it was done the way all our regulations are. What starts with a regulations committee, there's a public comment period, goes through the conservation commission, all the steps that a regulation today takes too. So I mean, it was supported by the public. So, but that's the answer to the question. Like I say, the direct answer is no. There's no age break. That
Yeah.
yes, you have to pay. You have to pay regardless of age. It's $12, 16 and older. It's $6, 15 and younger. That's for the trout permit. But this price goes to fund a fishing opportunity that is very popular with Missourians.
And it seems like a good deal. I haven't priced trout yet, but let's say you catch is. I haven't looked at the limit either.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a limit. Usually
Yes.
there is when you're fishing.
Yes.
But I
Yes.
haven't
It
priced
kind of
them
depends
out. I'm
where
sure
you're
it's a
fishing.
good deal if you catch
Yeah,
it.
it's a good deal. I can't compare it to other states, but I will say that our trout fishing and I mean trout permit is a it's accepted by the public, and part of that is because trout fishing is popular with Missouri. It's it's a different fish, obviously, than bass, crappie, things like that. It provides different fishing opportunities, uh, and part of it is the fish itself. I mean, trout are a popular fish. Fish are a good tasting fish, but part of it is the different opportunities to provide. For instance, in the trout streams, they're outdoor. I mean, it's a very therapeutic way of fishing think
Hmm.
river runs through it. If you're old enough to remember that movie, things like that. At the trout parks, very family oriented fishing. I mean, it's stocked streams. Uh, the chances of catching fish there are very high at the trout parks. So it provides a good opportunity for the whole family to have fun catching fish. And at Taneycomo, very popular fish. Obviously, now it's close to a very popular tourist destination, Branson. But Taneycomo was a popular trout fishing destination before the Branson boom of the hit in the early 1980s. I mean, since Taneycomo was formed, turned into a trout lake, it was a very popular. Well, Taneycomo existed before the creation of the Table Rock Dam, but when Taneycomo became a trout lake in the early 1960s, it became a very popular trout fishing destination, not only in Missouri but throughout the Midwest. I mean, it is mentioned in if we're old enough, we remember the Beverly Hillbillies. They had a couple of they had I think they had 3 episodes that were filmed in Silver Dollar City. One of the things that Uncle Jed and I think Shad Heller were going to do was going to go trout fishing at Lake Taneycomo. They mentioned that during the show, so even back then it was popular. So
I don't remember that.
yeah,
Okay.
there was 3 episodes of Beverly Hillbillies that were, and this it. Okay, we could go a whole nother story here. Paul Henning was from Missouri. Paul Henning produced the Beverly Hillbillies, and because of that, he had property down in the Branson area, which is now the Ruth of Paul Henning Conservation Area. But because of that, there's 3 episodes of the Beverly Hillbillies that were filmed at Silver Dollar City, and as I said, one of the things that Uncle Jed was going to do, he mentioned it on the show, was going to go trout fishing at Lake Taneycomo. So even back then, it was a popular thing to do.
Trout season. It we know
Yeah.
it started. It does come
Right,
to an
right,
end.
right. Okay. Oh, and I'm glad you mentioned that too, because there's a little confusion about the trout season, what we call the March 1st trout opener. That applies to the summer season at the 4 trout parks. Again, that's Roaring River State Park, Bennett Springs State Park, Montauk State Park, and Merrimack Spring Park. That goes from March 1st to October 31st. But that trout season, if you will, that is a season that's just at the trout parks. You can fish for trout at Taneycomo throughout the year. You can fish for trout on some of our managed streams, like again, like at Crane Creek, places like that. You can fish for trout there throughout the year.
Mm.
So even though it's called a trout season, which it is, but it's a season at the 4 trout parks. The other places you fish for trout in Missouri, you can fish for trout there throughout the year.
Is the current river one of those?
I think so. Hang on, I'm going to turn away from your shot. I know this won't make a good sound bite, but it will be okay.
Oh, I'm just curious. Yeah.
No, Caps Creek, Crane Creek, Blue Spring Creek, Barren Fork Creek, Hickory Creek. That's in Neosho. Yes, Current River. Yes,
Okay.
yes. North Fork, the White River, Rubidoo Creek. Yes, and they're all. A lot of them have some different like regulations as far as how many you can keep and all that kind of stuff. So just if you want to go trout fishing in Missouri, look where you're going, look what the regulations are, because they could be a little bit different from another area that you fish for trout at.
From one to the next.
Yes, yes.
Great. A lot of times the department has free fishing days for kids, for
Yes.
seniors. Again, that applies to fishing. It
Right,
doesn't
right,
apply to
right.
trout fishing.
Well, but we have, for instance, at Roaring River on May 17th, which is coming up, we have a kids fishing day. That's an annual event we have in the spring at Roaring River. We actually have one in August too. We call it the fall fishing day, but that's where kids for fish for free. Bennett Spring, we have uh, uh, each year they have a veterans fishing day where veterans get to fish, military veterans get to fish for free. They have a ladies fishing day. So we do have and of course, then it's the second weekend of June. It's state free fishing weekend where that Saturday and Sunday you don't have to pay for a permit to fish at any public place in Missouri. And this does include the trout parks. They will still give you a trout tag, but it's free for those 2 days. The reason they give you a trout tag is it helps they like to keep a track of attendance for the whole year. And so even though they're that those 2 days on free fishing weekend in June, they don't charge you for that tag. You're still issued a tag, and that helps them keep a number of how many people are fishing at the park.
Well, I'm glad I asked about that. So if this particular viewer wants to get a benefit without paying, then they need to look for these special days on the
Yes,
calendar.
yeah, yeah, and
And you
yes,
guys
yes.
have that on your website, I'm sure.
Yes, it is on the website. Yes, so there, like I say, free fishing weekends coming up in June. I'm guessing this viewer is probably a regular fisherman. So, but yeah, we do have special fishing event, and like I said, the big one is free fishing weekend, which is in June, and that Saturday and Sunday, nobody has to pay for a permit to fish in any place in Missouri. So yeah, and like I say, this is an opportunity to talk about how special trout fishing is in Missouri, and the fact that yes, there is this price that people pay regardless of their age, but it covers a fishing opportunity that has always been popular in Missouri since it began in the early 1900s.
Okay. Francis, I thank you for your time today.
No problem, Paul. Call anytime. So.